right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Natalie Barrera. I'm the Acting Director for Early Learning here in the Mayor's Office. Thank you so much for joining on this evening. We have a small but mighty group, so we're super excited to just make time and space for conversation. But before we go ahead, we're going to give a little bit of housekeeping information. Thanks, Maggie. So first, we will be offering live Spanish interpretation. So I'm going to pause for a second for our colleague Debbie to give that announcement.
Thank you. Hola, buenas tardes. Soy David Quiroz, el coordinador de participación de padres y comunidad para Birth to Five Illinois. Gracias por estar aquí. Y bueno, para las personas que necesiten interpretación de esta presentación, pueden dar clic en el globito abajo de su pantalla que dice Interpretation o Live Transcripts, perdón, y puede seleccionar español. Va a tener la opción de inglés y español allí para que pueda escuchar la presentación en español. Nuestro compañero Aaron Reyes está en el canal de español esperándolos, listo para traducírselos. Así que si tienen alguna pregunta, por favor déjenme saber. Gracias.
Great. Thank you. As you all probably noticed, this session is being recorded. And so just an FYI, we're recording it and then we will put it on the Birth to Five and ECRC webpage so that folks can reference it in case they just heard some really great information that they don't want to make sure they don't forget. So that will be on there. We do have a live transcription. And so if you click on the bottom, you should see two C's, so CC and live transcript. So that is a service that is available. It may not be perfect. It is offered through Zoom. So we apologize in advance for any kind of errors in the transcription. And then just a flag for everyone, we have about 30 minutes at the end of the presentation to engage in the Q&A. And so we will be opening it up for questions and really hope to engage with you all around some of what you've heard today. So I think that is it for our housekeeping. And so the mayor could not be with us tonight, but she did want to go ahead and send a message. And we do have her message ready to play for you all.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mayor Lori Lightfoot, and I am so pleased to welcome you to this important meeting, which officially kicks off the expansion of Every Child Ready Chicago, which will serve as the birth to 5 action councils for our city. As a city, we must ensure that every child receives a high-quality early education and provide them with the tools and opportunities they need to thrive for a lifetime. However, we can't accomplish this goal alone. That's why we are excited to be part of this collaborative effort, which is a great example of how the city and state can work together. By investing city and state resources to lift up shared priorities, we will be better able to ensure that our youngest children and their families have the resources that they need starting at birth to succeed for the rest of their lives. When we work together, everyone wins. This is a great step towards aligning and coordinating a fragmented, siloed system. Without a network of quality learning programs supporting its workforce, the city of Chicago cannot thrive, much less provide critical support to families when they need it most. So we need your help to build a better future for our families and early childhood providers. So thank you so much for being a part of this effort. I'm excited about the great work that we will accomplish together on behalf of our children and their families.
And now from Birth to Five, we have a welcoming address from some state leaders.
Hello, I'm Dr. Carmen Ayala, the Illinois State Superintendent of Education, and I am just so pleased to welcome you to this kickoff event to learn about the new and exciting 39 Birth to Five Action Councils that will be launched across the state. The council regions are based on the geographic areas of the regional offices of education. These councils are being created in direct response to recommendations made by the Governor's Commission on Equitable Early Childhood Education and Care Funding. You know, I was a member of this commission along with 30 other community leaders. And as we received input and feedback from over 500 parents, providers, community members, and advocates, it became very clear that there is a need to systematically engage families, providers, and community members in our planning and policymaking to create a fairer, more equitable early childhood system. As a former kindergarten teacher and bilingual program administrator, and currently a grandmother to 3 children that are early childhood aged, I completely understand firsthand the importance of high quality early learning to set students up for success. We need your help, and I hope that as you hear more about this initiative today, you will want to join in and make Illinois the best state for families raising young children.
I'm Grace Ho, Secretary of the Illinois Department of Human Services, and I'm so pleased to participate in the official introduction of the 39 Birth to 5 Action Councils. These action councils are strongly aligned with the mission of the Illinois Department of Human Services to strengthen Illinois by building up lives and communities through integrated networks. This new regional system is being intentionally designed to ensure that families, practitioners, and community members across the state, especially those whose voices historically have not been heard, are engaged in the process of identifying needs and developing solutions to address those needs. In order for the councils to succeed, we need a diverse group of stakeholders, community members, parents, and family members, childcare providers, elected officials, and early learning advocates who are committed to transforming our early care and education system to serve on our Birth to 5 Action Councils. We hope we can count on you for your support and participation.
Greetings. I am Dr. Jamila Jordan, Executive Director of the Illinois Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development. And on behalf of the GOECD team, I am pleased to welcome you to this Birth to 5 Illinois virtual regional kickoff event. Governor J.B. Pritzker established an audacious goal that Illinois will become the best state in the nation for families raising young children. As recommended to the governor by the Early Childhood Funding Commission, one important step that will bring Illinois closer to achieving this goal is the establishment of regional councils across the state to lift up family, community, and provider voice. Ensuring all children and families have access to the services they need will require a wide range of stakeholders working together in every community in Illinois. Parents and families, business and community leaders, early childhood educators in every early learning setting, from school district officials, Head Start program administrators, child care centers to family child care programs and advocates. This is an opportunity for local residents to come together to address the early childhood needs within your own community. We trust you will join us in this important effort to center family and community voice and transform early learning in Illinois. Thank you and be well.
All right, well, again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Here on the screen, you see a quick overview of our agenda today. So we'll give you an introduction to the Birth to 5 Illinois team, to Every Child Ready Chicago, and more importantly, get into some information about why we are integrating. We'll share with you how ECRC membership is expanding and the opportunities for folks to complete the interest form to be able to participate in that working group. We'll talk a little bit about the work we've done to establish a framework for the Chicago Family Council that's critical to this work. We'll wrap it up with our presentation, presenting a snapshot of key data points for the city of Chicago, as well as a new initiative called the Chicago Early Childhood Integrated Data System, or CECIDS. And then we will have about 25-30 minutes to do questions. And so that'll really be the time for you all to come off mute and to engage in discussion with all of us here.
Hello all, my name is Cicely Fleming and I am the State Director for Birth to 5 Illinois. As Natalie said, we are happy to welcome you here this evening and tell you about this joint venture and partnership between Birth to 5 Illinois and Every Child Ready Chicago initiative. Birth to 5 Illinois is a partnership between the state and INCRA, which is down in Bloomington, the Illinois network of child care resource and referral agencies. You might have heard of them. And we are charged with launching 39 regional councils using the map that's on the screen there, the ISB map of regional offices of education. Chicago is its own region, in which makes sense for us to go ahead and partner and expand the work of Every Child Ready Chicago. These regional councils will be made up of a variety of stakeholders, folks you might think of when you think of early learning, parents and providers, as well as advocates in the area. But we also want to bring in business leaders, other community members in terms of faith community, other local elected officials, to meet the governor's goal of making Illinois the best place to raise children. These councils will be advisory in nature, but they will be working to advance and understand the needs of parents and providers in the region. And so as they come together, they'll be looking at data points, but more importantly, they'll be working with the community members, in particular, focusing on those parents and providers to understand what they need in their community and how they want to advance early learning in their community. We will position them to be influential, hopefully, in policymaking and decisions around the state. Hopefully, the state will look at what the councils come up with in terms of what is needed in the area and use that as they're making their decisions. But at this time, as I said, they're just advisory. We also have dedicated staff, because if you look around our state, particularly with our advocacy groups and our local collaborations, a lot of them are limited because they don't have state funding. And so this entity will have funding for state staff. Those staff will support the community in doing that work to figure out what the parents and providers need in their community and helping them to make a plan to make that happen. Next slide, please. This is the state team, Birth to 5. We are a new initiative, about 6 months old, but we have a small and mighty team. So we are here to serve all the councils around the state, including Chicago. Sonia is on the call. She's our Director of Operations. Dina is not on the call with us tonight, but serves as our Family and Community Engagement Manager. David is Dina's counterpart. He is on the call with us tonight. Angela is Grants and Community Relations Manager. Also not on the call, but she will be doing a lot of work with our local collab. So if you represent that population, you'll be hearing from Angela later on this spring. Maggie is our Communications Director and on the call. And Kareen is also on the call. Kareen serves as kind of our, I would say, boots on the ground for Area 1, which also includes Chicago. So you might have engaged with Kareen in some community meetings as she's been helping us get the word out and making sure people understand the importance of our work. Jess also is not on the call, but does a lot of our email and social media in case you might have engaged with Jess there. So that is Birth to 5 as a whole, but we're here tonight to support Every Child Ready Chicago and answer your questions you might have for that later in the evening.
All right, so what is Every Child Ready Chicago? So in the fall of 2020, the mayor's office, in partnership with Start Early, launched a new working group that was essentially tasked with building a strategic plan for building a more cohesive, coordinated prenatal 5 system to truly serve families across the city. We called this new initiative Every Child Ready Chicago, with the ultimate goal of ensuring that every child in the city of Chicago would enter kindergarten ready to learn. The ECRC brought together diverse stakeholders, and so many of our current membership represent philanthropy, researchers, advocates, family childcare providers, city agency leaders, who else? Parents and families, and so it's very diverse. And ultimately, our goal was to create a process that would lead to greater transparency and build trust amongst different stakeholder groups. So since 2020, this group has been meeting. They've drafted a vision. They completed a landscape assessment. We identified initial strategic priorities. We hosted various shared learning journeys, which are really kind of deep dives into critical issues impacting the sector. And so the meetings have been ongoing, and they've been working since then to really think through what do we need to do to best improve the system for children and families. Next slide. And so really recognizing all of the work that was already underway in the city, the Birth to 5 team and the mayor's office was meeting to explore whether it would make sense to align these efforts instead of creating a whole separate table with a lot of the same voices. And so ultimately we decided that it would make the most sense for the Every Child Ready Chicago table to expand its membership to really serve as the Birth to 5 Action Council for the city of Chicago. I know that can be a little confusing because we have Birth to 5 language and ECRC language, but really the takeaway is that the Every Child Ready Chicago Working Group will be expanding its membership to be the Birth to 5 Action Council for the Chicago region.
So as Natalie said, as we've been working together, really we have a lot of the same shared values. Obviously, Birth to 5 is covering the entire state, but we're covering it region by region. And as Natalie said, Every Child Ready Chicago, clearly it's focused on Chicago. But when we lined our values up, you see that they're pretty much the same. And so racial equity, family voice, collective impact, bringing people together. Natalie just talked about how Every Child Ready Chicago is already doing that. And so that's totally in line with what we want to do across the state. Both of us prioritizing families and individuals who have been harmed and impacted by systematic inequities within our system. And so we can make sure that we're looking at those people, getting their voice and making sure that's prioritized as it hasn't been before. Making sure, of course, diversity and inclusion is #1 on our list. We have, Natalie has transparency, which we don't have as a shared value, but for sure is a value with our meetings and the way in which we have things on our website, wanting to make sure everybody feels like there's a space for them and they understand exactly what's happening. We always like to say, whether you're on the council or not on the council, this is a council that has to represent your voice. And so we want to make sure we get everyone's voice and then being accountable. So that part about making sure everybody's voice is there keeps us accountable. We're not just looking at the who's who and who historically has been asked to join councils like this, making sure that we're accountable to the whole public to match the values Every Child Ready Chicago, that every child should have an opportunity to enter kindergarten ready. And so we saw this as a natural partnership, as Natalie said, instead of having 2 different tables and more division, that we want to be inclusive and bring everybody together. Next slide. And so there on the left, you see what we have as our mission and vision for Birth to 5. And then if we accomplish that mission and vision, it, as we've been saying, goes right into Every Child Ready Chicago. So we want to imagine a more equitable early childhood education and care system that ensures family and community voice is prioritized at every level of decision-making in Illinois. And then Every Child Ready Chicago, if we accomplish that goal in partnership with them, they will meet their vision, which is every child in Chicago can thrive within well-supported families, effective programs, and well-resourced communities so that they grow strong, live joyful lives, and realize their greatest potential. And so lots of complementary work here that we look forward to doing together. Next slide.
I think this is me. So again, just to reiterate, why does it make sense for us to align our efforts? Again, the Birth to 5 approach is really recognizing the efforts that are happening locally and building off of that work. And so recognizing that ECRC had already done this work, it made sense that we partner on this initiative. We also thought that it was a very important opportunity for the city and the state to cooperate and coordinate, right? We always know that there's a lot of work to be done at those levels. And so we saw this as a great vehicle to do that. We also are sharing resources to lift up shared priorities. And so we have staffing supports that will really help elevate and take this work to the next level. And then lastly, the city of Chicago already invests in early learning collaborations throughout the city, and that is definitely a priority for the Birth to 5 team. And so we wanted to, again, leverage the work that's already underway in the city, build off of those collaborations to really help support our work and make sure that we're reaching communities and families across the city and not just in certain areas. And so we thought it would be a really great way to leverage our resources, our staffing, our priorities to reach more families. This is me again. So when we're thinking about the Action Council membership, here are some key requirements and commitments. Obviously, you have to live, work, or receive services in the city of Chicago. If you do not, there are many other regional councils that you can participate in, but this one is Chicago focused. This is a voluntary unpaid role, except for family and caregiver representatives. We will be compensating them for their participation. We want folks who are going to be actively participating and take action on these issues, right? So we need folks who are doers, who can attend meetings, who can review materials, who can share their expertise or their lived experience to really help inform our work. We want folks to disseminate information, to uplift recommendations, to really serve as ambassadors for this work, but to leverage their connections so that we are ensuring that information is getting shared both top down but bottom up, so that we don't have information gaps, that we want to be intentional about creating feedback loops so that folks can be made aware of the different activities that are happening across the city. And so those are some of the key priorities that were, or key requirements and commitments that we're asking our membership to make. And so here you'll see a list of who is represented on the current ECRC working group. If you go to the Every Child Ready Chicago page on our Chicago Early Learning website, you'll get a link in the chat. You can see the specific names for organizations, but for the city of Chicago, we already have the Child Care Resource and Referral represented. We have center-based providers. We have folks representing the workforce, whether that's the family child care workforce or folks who offer professional development services. As I've mentioned, we have home-based providers represented, data and researchers, philanthropy. We have a lot of key leadership from DCFS, CDPH, and other city and state agencies who have a lot of decision-making authority. So those folks are also at the table. We have advocacy organizations, as well as folks who represent family child care networks.
And this next slide actually gets to the question that Michelle had in the chat, which was how many seats are we expanding the council by, or excuse me, the work group by. And so as Natalie just listed everyone who they already have there, the state kind of had a framework of bringing together a diverse list of folks just based on perspective and their experience. And so when we looked at Every Child Ready Chicago and who they were engaged, we thought it made sense to bring in a couple more parents for this action council. There'll be conversation later about the parent council. As well as expanding the list for early childhood collaboration members. There's lots of early childhood collaborations within Chicago. And so I want to make sure that we have a diverse list there based on who they serve and where they are. Bringing in home visitors and early intervention providers as well. Always room to expand there. The state and the city want to make sure we support prioritized populations as identified by the state. And so that can help be captured by the CPS Office of Diverse Learner Supports. And so making sure that they're at the table to give us their input, as well as expanding the representation of family child care providers because they've been so vital to care during the pandemic. And then bringing in the business owners. Business owners have shown lots of interest in early childhood, obviously for their workforce, but for many different reasons. And so making sure we capture them and allowing them to not only weigh in on these conversations, but also see what they can help bring to the table in terms of expanding service delivery. So that's what we're thinking for this kind of first go round of expansion. There'll be more space later as we continue to grow and merge together. And as I said earlier, even if people don't have capacity or interest right now to be, on the work group, there will be opportunities for us to engage you and get your feedback as the work goes on. As we're looking to this expansion, Chicago and Birth to 5 work together to figure out an equitable selection process. And so there is an interest form. There'll be a link to that in the chat. if you are interested, as well as on both websites. So you can complete that to just let us know you're interested in being on the work group. Natalie and I will work together to kind of look at those and figure out, what perspectives are missing and how to add those based on who's interested. We'll use some kind of equity focused matrix, as well as just, again, looking at the list of who's who and who lives where. Natalie mentioned making sure we have folks by different zip codes. And so that'll be part of the criteria we look at to make selections. And then again, this is new and organic, so we'll evolve and this process will grow, and we'll expand the committee, but we also will hear feedback from the members and from the city to make sure that everything we're doing is transparent and equitable for everyone. Next slide, please. So this is what we have for the state in terms of year one priorities. And so the state's priority really is expansion of enrollment. We lost a lot of students before and during the pandemic. And so the state really wants to capture those students and have them come back to early learning experience. That is also part of the city's goal. And so these are kind of high level priorities. We left them a little bit high level so that each region has its own makeup and has their own needs. And so they can really coordinate this based on what parents and providers are telling them. We didn't want to be prescriptive as the state in terms of what people are working on. And so we want to make sure we build this infrastructure to advise policy. And so part of the infrastructure really is these councils that will be around the state. We want to make sure we align what's happening. And so how we're looking at supply and demand data, the data across the state is not necessarily great. Chicago has a leg up on that. You'll hear about that later, but we want to make sure that we're thinking about how data is collected and how we're using that. We want to plan for expansion. And so we want to make sure that data is used to plan for expansion, but that expansion also makes sense for the community in which the expansion is happening. So we want to make sure that half-day spots or home daycare spots or evening spots are put where parents need them, not just based on what the state might be guessing based on the data we have. And then again, our center goal is making sure we have authentic parent and provider voice. And so we want to make sure that what you all are telling us is part of what we're putting forward in our advisory capacity to state leadership. So we want to engage you to understand that piece, but also make sure that that's, front and center of anything that we're recommending from the councils. Next slide, please.
So hi, everyone. My name is Carmen Garcia, and I'm with Start Early. And I'm pleased to give a quick overview of sort of what has occurred and then offer a bit of a glimpse into what's to come for the family and community engagement piece of this initiative. So next slide. So in September of last year, the Family and Community Engagement Group was brought together to really think through what a family council, so essentially a parent-only space, could look like for the city of Chicago. Ahead of the initial meeting, a colleague of mine at Start Early and I interviewed several different community groups, organizations, and collaborations across the city to really try to understand what the landscape of family and community engagement was in the city. And we spoke to several groups from different community areas. So currently, the Family and Community Engagement Group is co-facilitated by myself, and it's done in partnership with Illinois Action for Children and with Kofi. And we were really fortunate to be able to take the groundwork from those initial interviews done over the summer, as well as really leveraging the great resources and initiatives that already exist in Illinois, such as Raising Illinois and the Family Advisory Committee of the Illinois Learning Council. And we've really taken those initiatives to sort of help inform our work. So the way we have operated sort of so far is that the Family and Community Engagement meeting has done its decision-making by consensus, which has really helped our discussions be rather rich and really include sort of opinions that are outside of the majority. So this committee will actually wind down its meetings in April and then work, to produce its recommendations. And then after the recommendations are shared, then, planning for implementation will occur over the next several months to really think through what that could look like. So next slide, please. So since the launch of Birth to 5 Illinois, the Family and Community Engagement Group has really worked in partnership to ensure, integration and alignment. So we've had a pretty collaborative relationship with the Family Engagement team of the Birth to 5 Illinois, really just to, again, ensure that we can coordinate and that, we're working in step with one another. So another thing that's been sort of beneficial is that both the Birth to 5 Illinois team and the Family and Community Engagement Group have had some shared agreements on several components, and those are really outlined on this slide. So really thinking about, the fact that this body will be an advisory committee for the larger Action Council. It's an opportunity for parents, families, and caregivers to provide critical input, offer feedback, really just advocate for the needs of families and their communities, as well as identify gaps and really sort of raise any issues of concerns that happen to come up. So with that, I will actually kick it over to David with the Birth to 5 team.
Thank you, Carmen. Hi, again, my name is David Quiroz. I'm the Family and Community Engagement Coordinator with the Birth to 5 team. So again, continue to talk about the Family Council. We're looking for that diverse family representation in these councils, racial diversity across the entire city, families that live across the entire city, especially in the areas that have been under-resourced or underrepresented in the past. Family members who serve on the Family Council will receive a stipend. I think we mentioned that previously, for their time and for their experience. This is the foundation of the work of this collaboration. We're also asking family members to serve a 2-year term if possible. Now, like the Action Council, they will have the option to commit to 1 year with the opportunity to then extend that into a 2nd year. Most importantly, we're looking for the willingness to share those lived experiences. The mission, the vision is to really gather that narrative, right, directly from families. That is the foundation of the work. So very, very important. And I'm going to pass it on to the next slide.
All right, and please keep the questions coming. We've provided some responses already, but drop any thoughts in the chat. So the next few slides just provide you all with a very big picture overview of the early learning landscape in the city of Chicago. It is not an exhaustive list of all of the data points. I know that we love data and could really get into all of the nuances and details in the system, but really we're just sharing, again, just some big picture data points so we get a sense of what that early learning landscape looks like for the city. All right, so we know that that Chicago has a significant portion of the state's early childhood market. And so, based on our landscape assessment, we have close to 193,068 children 0 to 5 in the city. That accounts to about 25% of all children 0 to 5 in the state that live in Chicago. So that's pretty big. We're also very rich in diversity. So in the middle here, you'll see the breakdown of children 0 to 5 by race and ethnicity. And you'll also see that, we have more than a third of the Latinx children 0 to 5 that live in the state are in Chicago. Nearly half of all Black children ages 0 to 5 that live in the state are in Chicago. And then over here on the right-hand side, 1/3 of Chicago residents speak a language other than English at home, Spanish being the primary language spoken, but we also have a rich diversity in terms of the languages spoken. And so the people are really our greatest assets, and that's key for us to understand. Next slide. With all of that, we also recognize that there are a lot of systemic barriers that impact our community's health and overall well-being. And so we know that 25% of children 0 to 5 in Chicago live in poverty. And we know what that looks like over here by race ethnicity. So 42.7% of Black children live in poverty compared to 28.5% of Latinx children who live in poverty. Over here, I won't read everything to you, but you'll see some of the economic disparities that we experience in the city. Down here, 36% of children live in households with a high housing cost burden. We know that that's a real issue for communities across the city. And so that's important to note. Here on the middle and right side, you'll see that we have a long way to go to provide adequate prenatal care for our families. Almost 40% of folks do not receive adequate prenatal care. That, in this day and age, that's so astonishing to me, right? We know that that's important and critical for overall well-being. And so it's important that we understand these barriers. We also know that there are a lot of children, approximately 6,000, who go without health insurance. And so that is a huge gap in our health system. And then we're also kind of have some data points around births and infant mortality. The percent of, 13% of babies are born too early, 9.5% are born with low birth weight. And we know that this can impact a child's healthy growth and development for the long term. And so there are some very real system barriers that we need to address as we think about building a more coherent prenatal to 5 ecosystem. And then we can't talk about early learning without talking about the workforce. We know that the adults that care for our children can have the biggest impact on their health and well-being, their social emotional development, on all things that really matter. So we wanted to create a little snapshot of what that currently looks like for the city. So under fast facts, you'll see that there are 448 licensed center-based sites with the capacity to serve 34,151 children. This is data from ICAM from 2020. So just FYI, that's where it came from. We also know that we have a really strong childcare home sector, right? So we have 992 sites that serve close to 10,654 children. We also know that CPS serves 15,500 students through 775 full-day pre-K classrooms. And again, really thinking about the diversity of our population, compared to the rest of the state, Chicago has the greatest racial diversity among teaching staff in licensed center-based care. 43% are Black, 30% are Latinx, 19% are white. And so that's super important. And we also have a great bilingualism amongst our teachers. So the data points down here really highlight how many providers or educators identify as bilingual. Over here on the right-hand side, Chicago has the highest rate of staff with completion of a college degree, more than the rest of the state. And so you'll see 85% of licensed center administrators have college degrees, 74% of licensed center teachers, 40% of assistant teachers, and 40% of family childcare owners or providers have completed a college degree. And yet, kind of recognizing all of this, we know that we have a lot of work to do to get highly qualified and prepared educators, but also compensated educators into the field. And so the Chicago Early Workforce Partnership Employer Council estimates that Chicago needs 3,000 new and 1,000 upskilled early childhood educators by 2024. So we need folks. We also know that COVID has really impacted our workforce, and that our workforce has been the reason why our economies have really survived, right? People needed to work. I mean, I think more than ever, everyone recognizes the importance of the field, but we know we have a lot of work to do to make sure that they are compensated fairly. So just flagging that'll be something we talk about a little bit more. But that is your quick snapshot of the city of Chicago and the early learning landscape. So I'm going to transition it over to Christina Krasov, who's going to talk to us about the Chicago Early Childhood Integrated Data System, which is an exciting new initiative, all focused on data that I'm sure you're all going to be super excited about.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Natalie. As Natalie mentioned, I'm Christina Krasov. I am a consultant in the early childhood space, mostly in Chicago. And I'm excited to throw in another acronym here at 6:13 p.m. I'm going to make this interactive because I guess there's some grumbling bellies and some children in the mix, so why not? So first, if you go to the next slide, let me just tell you what this particular acronym stands for. It's Chicago Early Childhood Integrated Data System. It is a cloud-based platform, so it's from the future. that will help us do data integration better. So just for the sake of that interactive and getting the spirit going, please put in the little emotion icon, the emoticon, click that reaction button if you've had to use data for your job. Don't be shy. There we go. Celebrations. All right. So the reality is most of us in our various positions have to use data, and more often than should, it can get really cumbersome and challenging to interpret the data, to know where it comes from, its reliability, its accuracy. And then also fundamentally, as I understand it, data is, as Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. And for us, we're trying to do better for children. So the best use of data in the early childhood space is when you have a better holistic understanding of the child and that family's needs. And so often we have to link data together in order to get that, you can't just look at the data silos in isolation. So an integrated cloud-based platform will allow us to do that in a faster and easier way. We have started this work, actually started back in 2018, which seems like a long time ago, but it did take some time to first understand what kind of services or technology would be needed. We brought in some experts, national experts, who looked at our technology here in Chicago and made some key recommendations. And there was a prototype developed. It was a data warehouse prototype that was developed in partnership with CPS and DFSS. So kudos and thank you to the leaders. It was part of that effort. And now it is evolved to incorporate more data partners. And it is a public-private governance, which means that the data there's a shared accountability and a shared commitment to transparency around that integrated data. And as early as the initial funding for this came in the spirit of public-private partnership, there was some catalytic flexible funding that turned on from the McCormick Foundation and the Crown Family Philanthropies that was then just taken on. There was a city investment, and most recently also a state of Illinois investment. So even in the way it's been funded, it's had that flavor. And thank you to those who've been supporting it. And as everything that we do in early childhood, it's all about development. And so this is not an end all be all. This is a point of time, and we over time seek to continue to add data sources to this comprehensive data set and keep growing it and keep learning from it. Next slide. As I mentioned, the data is not intended to be punitive or simply for compliance purposes. We do want to center data dialogues around children and being able to have access to the data in a timely way so that we can pursue higher outcomes, greater kindergarten readiness, school readiness, and higher quality as a prerequisite to getting to those outcomes. The other strategic reason why this investment has been made in an integrated data system is fundamentally because resources are tight. And I know the state of Illinois, the peers and leaders on this call have done incredible work to advocate for additional resources. And I believe that work will continue, but I don't believe it's going to just, the skies will open all of a sudden. So we will continue in early childhood to have to prioritize our investments. That just seems like the reality. And so having a data set that is comprehensive, that looks across the city at all children, regardless of the mechanism of delivery or their access to programming today, to help prioritize those investments. That's really the strategic value add for communities across Chicago. Next slide. And so just to kind of geek out on the technology, just want to leave you with, this is not just a data warehouse. That sometimes is a shortcut for this work, but there's really so much more. So the analogy here is like in the old days, we would go on a road trip and try to bust out our book maps and have a highlighter, and then we get stuck in traffic and give up and get stressed out and yell at people. So now that we're in the future, next slide, please. We have the ability to have information at our fingertips in a way that's easy to digest and also interactive in real time. And so CECIDS is trying to leverage those modern technologies to be able to do that. And again, it's all about the discussions around the data and being able to look at something, again, not in a punitive or just for compliance, but really try to think of how we can, when we learn better, do better. And so this side speaks to the public-private governance around this. So you'll see both private entities represented and community-based organizations, as well as our public friends that are included in this call. So NIU is a trusted host of the technology. They do quite a bit of work already partnering with the state and city agencies. They work with the Illinois Longitudinal Data System, which is to integrate data from all the different state administrative data sets. And they've produced reports and insights for early childhood as well. So they are a natural partner for the CECIDS work. And the direction, they'll be given direction from what we're calling data governors. So again, this is idea of those who are contributing their data, and these are the early contributors. It will evolve over time, as I mentioned, but they will have a shared sense of stewardship around that data. And so that's inclusive of INCRA and the folks on the call here from Birth to 5, as well as representation from CPS, DFSS, and the latest Head Start grantees. Those of all, everyone has signed a data participation agreement, as well as a data governance agreement. So they're all ready to go. And of course, as we do in Chicago, as spirit of this 6:19 p.m. call, we do things collaboratively and we want to get input. And so just as there's the council composition, when it's related to data, we also want to make sure that we're plugging and aligning it with all the right stakeholders. And so there's a list of additional voices that we would like to make sure are engaged. Fundamentally, this is an asset. All of CECIDS is an asset to the council. And we're ready to go. Next slide, please. We've spent the winter, as I mentioned, this project has been going and brewing for some time. A lot of groundwork has been laid. Most recently in the winter, we spent time doing the very unsexy stuff of legal data sharing agreements and things that can bore you at 6:20 p.m. But that work was necessary to launch CECIDS, this next chapter. And in a couple of weeks, we'll be turning on for those participating operational dashboards so that they can start to see their data mirrored for them in easy to digest ways. And then drum roll, by the summer, we'll start to have our first views of citywide views. And that's tying census data along with programmatic data and other administrative data sets, and really getting a sense of, as Cicely mentioned, supply and demand for Chicago in a more real time, especially in this post-pandemic or kind of pandemic timeframe. And then in the fall, in this iterative developing spirit and doing better spirit, we'll revisit what we've already seen and the reports that are already out and available, and then come to a collaborative consensus around what we should do next, how we should improve the data, underlying data set, additional data sources, additional partners, additional audiences, et cetera. So that's what we'll be doing the fall, getting ready for the upcoming year. So thank you. Any questions?
There was a question in the chat about, let me see, go back. Jennifer asked, are accelerating gateways not being used consistently for quality? And I think I would love to answer that question for you, but I am not sure. Christina, if you know, I'm happy to defer to you. Or we also have a few folks from INCRA who actually host accelerating gateways who might be able to answer your question.
I'm not going to step on any toes here, but so I'm going to quickly respond from my little point, my perspective, and then share. Unfortunately, no, because especially if we're looking at a comprehensive view across the system, across the various ways that children are in learning environments, no. And so while there's many of us who believe and appreciate that system, not everyone is on it. And I know that there's some work. The other opportunity would be, I know there's some work to make it even more actionable, right? So like if I have gold or bronze, what can I do more? Like, what is that opportunity for continuous quality improvement? for me. So I think there's an opportunity to have it be more consistent and also more actionable.
Christina, there was a question around, is there a website with more information on CECIDS? And we re-upped the link that we shared with the citywide views, but don't know if you want to add anything else.
We're working on it. In fact, there may or may not be a press release coming out soon. And then we're working on a website. It will probably maybe live in a couple of different places, including NIU, since they are the host. Who asked that question so I can say thank you?
Michelle, who's been on it.
Michelle, you got really good questions.
Yeah.
Just, I acknowledge your question skills.
I am so sorry for my questions.
No, they're great. We appreciate them. And if folks have questions, can they contact you, Christina, around CECIDS? And
Yeah,
would you share an email?
Yeah, I have a generic one. Sorry, it's not professional, but it's my name at Gmail. I'm putting it in the chat box right now.
That's professional.
Yeah, feel free. Feel free to. I'm happy to. I offered it on the previous version of this. I'm happy to do kind of an onboarding session or just kind of give you more information on CECIDS.
And this is really time for you all to ask questions, to make comments, to reflect on the information you heard, to give us any advice or any thoughts. So really open it up to the group. If you all have anything to share. You don't have to use the chat. You can also just come off mute.
Hi, I'm sorry if this question was already answered. I joined a little bit late because I was coming off another meeting, but are we going to get the recording of this today? Unfortunately, I missed the mayor's opening. So are we going to get a recording of this?
It was so good too. You missed it. But yes, you.
I saw the tail end. It was like, don't leave me, Mayor. And then she was gone. So there you go.
No, yes, we will be sharing the recording and it's going to be on the Birth to 5 website. And we'll make sure to put it on the ECRC webpage within the next week.
And then again, this is, who is the contact for Chicago area? For what's happening through the mayor's office, is that whom?
You can contact me, but me and Cicely work in partnership, so we'll definitely share information with one another, but I am the Chicago, your local contact person, and I can include my information in the chat.
Thank you so much. There is a upcoming International Early Childhood Conference that's going to be here in the city in September. And I really think this is some great information to be a part of that conference, obviously because of what the state is doing itself, but because Chicago, because we are Chicago, have our own flair. So I would love to talk with you, Natalie and Cicely, to just see how we can get this information shared out on an international level, because there are a lot of people looking at what is happening in Illinois through the governor's vision and wanting to see how this great work can be spread nationally. And this is an international conference. So I think this is hopefully something we can have a conversation about. And I too am putting my email in the chat.
Definitely.
Natalie, I have a question. This is Edna Navarro Vidal. I think the person who was talking about the community engagement piece was Carmen. So I was just curious about, I know there was like an engagement process that was done to collect, information, et cetera, and I was just curious about what Chicago communities were represented in that engagement process.
Yeah, I'm happy to send you a list, Edna, if that would be helpful. I don't know them like off the top of my head since it happened over the summer. But we did talk to the early childhood collaborations that are in existence. And we did talk to folks at least one organization, sort of like the north, south, west, and like east portion of the city, but I'm happy to follow up if that's helpful.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Could you clarify what kind of groups are included in early childhood collaborations?
So these are actual early childhood collaborations. So there's, for example, the Altgeld Riverdale collaboration that we spoke to. There's the Little Village early childhood collaboration. And everyone is slightly different, sort of based on the region. So I can't necessarily speak to the makeup. I don't know if someone else has maybe a little bit more background on collabs that can speak to that, but.
Are those community-based organizations or?
They tend to be housed out of local community-based organizations, and they implement like a tiered approach, various strategies to increase either enrollment into programs, to help families troubleshoot. And so what we've seen at the city is different engagement strategies that will be implemented either at a block by block level or through parent ambassadors, doing door knocking. And it's really to increase awareness of programs and resources and to help facilitate kind of either applying or enrolling in programs. So the strategies may look different across communities, but it usually entails one home community-based organization that may have partnerships with various local social service providers who are then kind of coordinating to reach families.
Thank you.
And I'm not an expert. This is just what I know. I'm sure there are other folks who can chime in.
I just dropped in. I know the Partner Plan Act website has a lot of resources around the collaborations. So if folks are curious around that, they may want to check that out.
Any more questions?
Sorry if I missed this somewhere, but is the interest form then for Chicago the same as the birth to 5 one, and you would just specify within that?
It is a little bit different. There is a link that
We will drop in the chat.
we will drop in the chat.
Any second now.
It's also on the next slide, but yes, and then it will be, and that was said earlier, on both websites. So it's a little bit different, but covers the same, trying to figure out, who you are, what you represent, and those kind of questions. If you've already filled out one, on the Birth to 5 site, if you want to just send us an email to let us know if there's any of you to do the second one, so we can just make sure we capture the one that you already filled out. All righty, would you want to go to the next slide, Maggie? If anyone has any more questions, you can still, unmute, or we'll keep moving here. So this is to Michelle's point, what's our next step? So there is a council interest form if you're interested. As David and Carmen mentioned earlier, they're still working through the family council design, and so that will be forthcoming. You can get that via email. I'm sure there will be maybe even another meeting once that comes out for people who have questions. As we mentioned before, there is funding through Birth to 5 for backbone support for the regional councils, and so that includes Chicago. So there is now a position, job description, and a place to apply on the link that you now, thanks Maggie, put in the chat. It's also on our website. If you want to take a look at it there, please feel free to share that around, looking for someone who can be Natalie's partner in getting the work moving forward. And then Natalie or Christina, I'll let you speak to the workforce survey.
Go ahead, Christina.
Sure. So one of the other initiatives happening in Chicago is actually happening right now. So this is perfect timing to help get the word out. We're launching a survey, citywide survey. We want directors, teachers, and family care providers, anyone who works with children, to take the survey. This will help us better understand compensation. We believe that there's opportunities to have more equitable compensation for early childhood teachers, and this will allow us to see where, kind of pinpoint where there might be opportunities to improve that equity. So it takes, the survey takes, if you're a teacher, it takes about 12 minutes. If you're a director, it takes about 20 minutes. You will be entered into a gift for a $100 gift card. I'm going to put the link in the chat box. Please, this is very important to do. We want to have inclusive data. This will help us all advocate together for one of the most important investments in early childhood, which is supporting our teachers who do Herculean work and should get paid more in general. So if you help fill out this survey, this will just give us that data that we need to help make the case. So I'm going to put it in here. The application is open until, the survey is open until the end of the week.
All right, thank you. So in wrapping up, there are some links available. I think Maggie has put most of them in the chat by now, but there were some questions that we've received just over the last several months regarding Chicago in particular. So Natalie was kind of to answer them there. So they are on our website. We will continue to add to that as we get questions that we realize people, send to us. And so we can make sure we're always being transparent. You can also visit any of the websites there for more information about what we spoke of this evening. The Every Child Ready Chicago website has information regarding what the work group has been doing up to date. And so if you want to find out about who's currently on the work group and things that they've been looking into, please check that out. And then there will be a funding opportunity through Birth to 5 for those local collabs. So my colleague Angela is working on that. So that will be coming out in the next month or so. And so make sure you pay attention or sign up to our website if you want to participate in requesting those funds for your local collaborative work. And Angela will be hosting some webinars to educate people on that as well. And I think next steps for this, Natalie and I will continue to work together. We'll be looking to hire staff. We'll be looking to expand those seats that we talked about. And so please share that interest form link far and wide. And then Natalie and I will put together a calendar of when the next meeting will take place.
All right, well, thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate you making time this evening. We know it's hard. I'm sure many folks are juggling making dinner or children, so we appreciate the time you took to spend some time with us today. And you have our emails and contact information. Feel free to reach out with questions, and you'll be hearing more about this partnership in the coming months. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Just a quick question
Oh.
before we end. Just to clarify, I'm sorry, I missed this. So if we already filled out an interest form for the Action Council on the Birth to 5 website, you just asked us to email Cicely and you to clarify that?
If you've already filled one out, if you want to email me, I can put my name back in the chat, or you can just go to our website. We have a contact us button. Just to let us know you put one in and you want to be, you want it to be for Chicago, and we could just, kind of pull it out of the electronic file there and make sure it gets over to Natalie.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's the Birth to 5, right, Christina, the survey? Is it up to age 3rd grade?
I was just thinking, yeah, for early childhood, if it's focused birth to 5, like educators of birth to 5, or like early childhood up to 2nd, 3rd in some.
Yeah, great question. I think for now, especially since we're also looking at compensation for the community-based organizations, it's mostly birth to 5.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good evening, and look out for information in your email.
Thank you.
Thank you.